Duchess of Cambridge stunned at the BAFTAs this week, complete with a couple of treasured items. On her wrist, the diamond quatrefoil bracelet, a favourite of the Queen's, which once belonged to the Queen Mother.
The palace bombshell just dropped. Princess Alexandra secretly handed the Queen Mother's most cherished private jewels directly to Catherine, completely bypassing Queen Camilla. This wasn't a mistake. It was the fulfillment of a deeply personal family instruction that's just now coming to light. But why did Alexandra choose Catherine? And what does this shocking exclusion reveal about Camilla's place in the royal family? Join us as we break down the latest drama rocking the British royal family. Princess Alexandra and Kate's secret transfer. You know, what most of us see of the royal family is really just the surface, right? The big ceremonies, the balcony waves, all the fancy outfits. But their real lives? That all happens far away from the cameras. It's in the quiet rooms, the private chats, the little moments that never get photographed. And that's exactly where this story started to bubble up. It began as whispers among the staff, private secretaries and long-serving aides, that Princess Alexandra had personally given a set of jewels from the late Queen Mother to Catherine. And get this, there was no press release, no official schedule, not a single note in the court circular. This was all done completely on the down low. Now, according to palace sources, this is a huge deal. Princess Alexandra wasn't just related to the Queen Mother. She was one of her absolute favorites. They were incredibly close, sharing decades of duties and a really deep family bond. But something shocking apparently happened right after the Queen Mother died back in 2002.
The Queen Mother has died peacefully at the age of 101.
Stick with us, because this story is just getting started. When the Queen Mother passed away in 2002, something interesting happened. Most of her personal jewelry did not immediately become part of the official state collection. Not everything belonged to the crown or the institution. Some pieces were hers alone, tied to her life, identity, and the private memories she cherished. These were not the grand jewels she wore in portraits or at major national events. They were gifts from her father, her husband, and close friends whose names do not appear in official biographies. They represented memory rather than status. The palace did not issue any announcement about where these pieces went, and that silence became its own confirmation. An absence of denial often speaks louder than any public statement. Within royal circles, staff, advisors, and royal watchers noted it. When protocol is involved, the palace clarifies. When it remains silent, it usually means something is private family business rather than monarchy business. Those who understood the value of the jewels knew they were not simply expensive items. They held emotional weight. Pieces worn during private holidays at Birkhall or quietly during tea with granddaughters had a different meaning from crowns, state necklaces, and official decorations. The state jewels symbolized duty. These personal jewels symbolized affection, memory, continuity, and lineage. And that lineage is what made the transfer to Catherine so significant. She was not just receiving beautiful pieces. She was receiving a part of the Queen Mother's personal story, poise, and temperament. The handover took place quietly. No cameras, no photographs, no stylists. It is said to have happened in a private room at Clarence House, a residence closely tied to the Queen Mother's final decades. The house had been her sanctuary after the death of King George VI. She maintained tradition there and kept alive the warmth for which she was beloved. To receive anything in that space carried deep symbolic meaning. According to palace insiders, Princess Alexandra did not act impulsively. The transfer was the completion of a responsibility she had held for years. The Queen Mother valued intention and steady remembrance. Alexandra safeguarded the jewels with awareness, not fear. She observed Catherine's role evolve not just in public, but in private rooms where tone and patience matter more than titles. She judged Catherine's presence in those spaces. But that is not the most surprising part. What left people speechless was the manner of transfer. The handover took place quietly. No cameras recorded it. No photos were released. There were no stylists or royal dressers present. It was said to have occurred in a private room within Clarence House, a residence closely associated with the Queen Mother during her final decades. Clarence House had been her sanctuary after the death of King George VI. It was where she held court in the gentlest sense of the word, welcoming guests, retaining traditions, and continuing the warmth and softness that made the public adore her. To receive anything within that house, let alone her personal jewels, would hold powerful symbolic meaning for anyone who understood royal culture. Royal historians describe the jewels as pieces the Queen Mother considered close to her heart. Some of them predated her marriage. Some came from family lines rarely discussed in public accounts. One story dates back to her early years as Duchess of York. According to royal historians, she wore it frequently during visits to hospitals during the Second World War. Queen Mother believed that jewelry should not only serve beauty, but also memory. Wearing something that reminded her of her past was a way to carry identity into the present. To hand these pieces to Catherine was to hand her the continuity of a personality that valued kindness as a form of authority. But something happened that has left royal observers in shock. Camilla had been bypassed during the handover of the jewelry. This was not a matter of oversight. It was an intention. Camilla already had her own place, her own history, and jewelry that reflected her lineage and her relationship with the king. But the Queen Mother's personal jewelry did not follow that path. They went to Catherine instead. And that choice said something without saying anything. It suggested that the meaning behind those jewels, the values and memories tied to them, would be safe with Catherine. There was no need for explanations or announcements. The people who were meant to understand simply understood, quietly. The senior courtiers, especially those who had served through more than one reign, understood what was happening without needing any explanation. They had watched monarchs come and go. They had learned to read meaning in small, quiet decisions. So for them, this moment wasn't about choosing one person over another or about influence or rivalry. It was about protecting something. The Queen Mother's idea of what the monarchy should feel like at its core. Catherine was not someone who chased attention. She did not raise her voice to fill a room, and she did not rely on force or performance to be noticed. She carried herself gently, yet people still felt her presence. That quality was not just admired, it was steadying. And that steadiness mattered to an institution that is always watched and always interpreted. So when Catherine received the jewels, she took them with full awareness of what they represented. However, many people are still wondering why Catherine, of all potential recipients. Keep watching because the story is about to take a dramatic turn. The Queen Mother's will. We mentioned earlier that some jewels belong to the crown, catalogued and regulated, stored in vaults, displayed during coronations and state occasions, and passed according to clear rules. Then there are the jewels that belong to individuals, the ones chosen for reasons that had nothing to do with protocol. The Queen Mother had both kinds, and she understood the difference with clarity. When she sat down to write the final details of her estate, she placed this distinction at the heart of her intentions. Within her will, there existed a sealed clause that governed the fate of her personal jewels. The sealed clause was not open to public review, and even within the royal family, only a very small number of individuals knew of its existence. This secrecy was not about hiding wealth, nor was it meant to create drama. It was born from her understanding that personal history should not be exposed to speculation. Personal memory, when documented, becomes guarded rather than felt. She wanted these pieces to remain protected from misinterpretation. The need for such care came from her life experiences. The Queen Mother had lived through profound shifts in public attitudes, from the years of the Second World War to the new cultural movements of the late 20th century. She had watched the monarchy survive difficult periods that tested its relevance and identity. She understood that values could change with time, not always for the better. She had seen public devotion rise and fall, loyalty challenged, and behavior within the royal family sometimes strain under pressure. She believed that symbols should not be entrusted to those who might treat them lightly. This concern was shaped by love for the institution she had dedicated her life to. She is widely praised as the steadying force of the monarchy during the 1936 abdication crisis. She stood beside a husband who did not expect to become king, and she helped him through the role with grace. These experiences left her with a sense of what could be lost if the wrong kind of character led the royal family. She believed that the monarchy survived not through wealth or privilege, but through restraint, service, and the ability to hold dignity under pressure. But that is not all. According to the instructions in her will, the recipient of the jewelry must be a woman who embodied service without self-promotion, who understood the value of public devotion without seeking praise, and who carried herself with modesty even under scrutiny. When she wrote these intentions, she did not know the details of how the future would unfold. She trusted that the right person would be recognized over time. Her confidence was rooted in her understanding of how character reveals itself slowly, especially in the world of royal life, where appearances are constant and pressures are high. As the years passed, Catherine's life aligned with these qualities. Her public image did not depend on statements or spectacle. Royal family watchers often speak of the calm and collected manner in which she approached official duties. She supported institutions quietly, especially those focused on early childhood development and family support. Surveys conducted in Britain repeatedly showed high public trust in Catherine. She built trust through continuity, and this mirrored the Queen Mother's approach. There was a shared belief that stability could be a form of leadership. Catherine's demeanor in private settings also convinced Alexandra. Those who worked closely with her described a steady patience, a lack of rush, and an ability to listen. These traits are rarely taught. They are shaped by upbringing, temperament, and intention. They indicated a grounded understanding of what it meant to hold influence without imposing it. This connection was central to the reasoning behind the sealed clause of the will. Camilla's exclusion from the transfer came from this same reasoning. It was not rooted in judgment of her person, but in the different narrative that shaped her public identity. The Queen Mother had been cautious about anything that might complicate the public's confidence in the monarchy. Now that the jewels had reached Catherine, Camilla's response shocked everyone. So, how did Camilla react to the transfer? Stay tuned, because the story is just getting started. Queen Camilla's reaction. The day the news of the transfer reached the palace, it began quietly, like a rumor nobody wanted to claim. That handover at Clarence House was done with extreme care. No official sign-offs, no staff signatures, no security timestamps. Nothing. It happened in a room that usually saw quiet tea meetings and handwritten letters. The absence of documentation was intentional. People who truly understand royal archives know what it means to leave something unrecorded. If you do something without a trace, it is meant to be beyond challenge. Trying to dispute it later would risk embarrassment for the institution itself. News of the jewels reached Camilla through a senior aide who looked deeply uncomfortable delivering it. The aide tried to frame it as a misunderstanding at first, trying to soften the blow. Camilla listened, waited, and then the reality settled. The Queen Mother's most personal jewels, the ones linked to private dinners at Royal Lodge and warm family gatherings, had been passed to Catherine without even the smallest notice to her. But that wasn't all. The realization brought not only surprise but a sharp sense of humiliation. Camilla had believed that as queen consort, she was naturally next in line for that sentimental legacy. Instead, she realized that the Queen Mother had standards that were not written in any royal charter. Camilla kept her practiced composure, but those around her noticed the stiffness in her posture and the absence of her usual quick humor. This moment revealed a truth that had been quietly shaping the monarchy for years. It has always functioned with two forms of acceptance. There is the formal kind, measured by titles, ceremonies, and coronations. Then there is the emotional kind, shaped by long memories, personal impressions, and the public's instinctive feeling. Camilla had earned her position through the formal path. Catherine, however, had grown into hers through the emotional one. The public had been drawn to her from the start because she felt reachable, steady, and unaffected by palace pressure. To the Queen Mother, those qualities were not merely about popularity. They signaled moral steadiness, which she believed to be heritage. The king tried to restore calm. He wanted to know when the decision had been made, who had been involved, and whether there was any possibility of re-evaluating it. The answer returned quietly through advisors. Revisiting the decision would draw unwanted attention to the emotional meaning behind it. If the palace attempted to reverse the transfer, the public could interpret that as calling the Queen Mother's judgment into question, and even suggesting that Catherine was unworthy. They could also interpret it as Camilla striving for a sentimental legacy that had not been intended for her. The king found himself trapped between loyalty and legacy. He wanted to protect his wife, yet he knew the transfer had not been an accident. The intention behind it was old and deeply considered. Advisors who focused on public perception understood the danger clearly. Challenging the transfer could create a narrative of insecurity and internal conflict. The safest approach was silence. Silence suggested dignity and steadiness. Any open conflict would suggest the opposite. Prince William viewed the situation on a personal level. He knew the history of the jewels. He understood that the Queen Mother had been careful with her affections and believed in duty without spectacle. He also knew how Catherine had carried herself for years under intense pressure. To him, the transfer felt appropriate and rooted in truth. William made it clear that he supported Catherine keeping the heirlooms. His position removed any remaining chance of quiet reversal. The future king had anchored the jewels where they now belonged. Inside the palace, the situation deepened existing divisions. Households that were supposed to function as one began speaking in careful tones. Advisors positioned themselves based on loyalty and anticipated influence. Those close to Camilla felt wounded on her behalf. Those close to William and Catherine felt vindicated, believing this moment confirmed Catherine as the public's emotional center of continuity. Meetings still took place. Schedules continued. Public appearances did not falter. But the tone had changed. Where cooperation had once been natural, there were now pauses where people measured their words. Catherine continued her duties with calm steadiness. She did not speak about the jewels outside her closest circle. She did not allow emotion to shape her expressions. Observers noted that she understood the full meaning of what she had been entrusted with. Her response reflected neither pride nor victory. It reflected a quiet understanding of responsibility. Those who admired her saw this as the very quality the Queen Mother valued. Camilla, however, felt the isolation grow in private. The palace is full of rooms where one can feel watched even when standing alone. She moved with caution, wondering whether every glance carried sympathy or judgment. Her confidence had been built slowly after years of earning the acceptance she once lacked. To have that progress challenged by something rooted in sentiment felt deeply unsettling. She was not someone who surrendered easily, but she understood how memory and reputation could define a life. King Charles found himself in this weird situation, and his reaction will surprise you. Palace sources confirmed that Charles felt the strain personally. He loved his wife. He respected his mother's legacy. He saw his son and Catherine preparing to carry the monarchy forward. Every decision had to serve both present stability and future continuity. The jewels raised a central question. Should inheritance be guided by rank or by values? Charles knew the Queen Mother had already answered that question through her private instructions. To challenge her now would be to undo the foundation she believed in. The palace said nothing publicly. The press did not know the deeper emotions moving behind closed doors. Yet inside the institution, everyone understood that something had shifted. The jewels now stood for a definition of rightful belonging. But what happened when Catherine eventually wore the jewelry outside? Stay tuned, because people's reactions will blow your mind. Princess Catherine's newfound brooch. The day Catherine returned to public duty did not look like anything special at first. There were no hints in the press that anything meaningful was about to happen. The event was a routine community engagement, the kind she attended often. People who came out to see her stood along the pavement with calm expectation, holding their phones, greeting one another and waiting for the familiar sight of her arrival. It was a peaceful morning. Nothing dramatic, nothing different from events like this in the past. A car pulled up, the door opened, and Catherine stepped out. She moved with the same gentle confidence people recognized. The crowd responded with polite smiles and a warm sense of welcome. Then, almost immediately, the atmosphere changed, though no one spoke of it out loud. The photographers noticed it first. Their lenses focused a little more sharply. Their hands paused for a short moment before they continued clicking. Something small had caught their attention. Pinned carefully to Catherine's shoulder was a brooch. It was a cluster of pearls surrounded by diamonds, arranged in a shape that older viewers had seen many times before. It was the same brooch that the Queen Mother often wore in public during her later years. There had been many portraits, many public photographs, many appearances where this very brooch had been visible. It was part of her signature presence. After her passing, it had not been seen again. Now, after more than 20 years, it was back, resting quietly on Catherine's clothing. There was no announcement explaining where it came from, no palace statement offering background or symbolic meaning. It simply appeared, as though it had always belonged exactly there. In royal life, silence can carry more clarity than words. This was one of those moments. The brooch did not need explanation. People understood what they were looking at, even if they understood it in different ways. For some, it was a memory. For others, it was a feeling of stability. And for many, it was a signal that something in the royal family had settled into place. Images of the moment spread online almost instantly. Social media users shared photographs, remarking on the familiarity of the brooch. Television news replayed the footage, slowing the frame each time Catherine stepped forward and the brooch caught the light. It did not sparkle in a dramatic way. Its shine was soft and calm. It had been designed in a different era, when jewelry was made to carry meaning rather than attract attention. Viewers, who had lived through the Queen Mother's era, felt a wave of recognition. They remembered her as a warm presence during years when the country struggled with uncertainty. During the Second World War, she visited bombed neighborhoods to encourage people. She refused to leave London during the air raids. People saw her as someone who stayed steady even when things were frightening. She believed in duty, but she also believed in joy. Many remembered her smile, which was always sincere and never forced, but that wasn't all. Seeing her brooch again reminded people of the Queen Mother's memories. It felt like a quiet return of a familiar spirit. Not dramatic, not heavy, simply reassuring. Newspapers picked up the story, but they described it with care. They noted that Catherine wearing the brooch suggested continuity in the monarchy. They pointed out that the brooch signaled respect for tradition during a time when public life often feels fast and uncertain. They did not treat it as gossip. They treated it as a moment of cultural meaning. In homes across the country, people talked about the brooch in an easy, reflective way. Some said it made the royal family feel more grounded. Others said it reminded them of a past era that felt kinder and more stable. Younger viewers, who had not lived through the Queen Mother's influence, understood the meaning from the reaction of others. It was clear that this was not about fashion. It was about legacy. Inside the palace, the moment carried deeper and more personal weight. Princess Alexandra saw the images of Catherine wearing the brooch. She did not need anyone to explain what it meant. For many years, she had carried the responsibility of guarding the Queen Mother's private wishes about her jewels. It had been a quiet task, not documented, not publicly acknowledged. It was something built on trust and loyalty. Seeing the brooch worn now was a sign that the responsibility she had carried was complete. She did not react dramatically. Those who know her describe her as calm and thoughtful. But she felt a sense of quiet relief, a sense of something finishing in the way it was meant to finish. The Queen Mother had believed her legacy would live through character rather than title. Alexandra had honored that belief. Charles also noticed the brooch. He did not mention it publicly, and he did not try to explain it. But he understood exactly what it meant. It was not a gesture directed at him, and yet it touched him deeply. His mother, the Queen, had held the monarchy together through long decades of change. His grandmother, the Queen Mother, had been the emotional anchor of the family. Catherine wearing the brooch connected the past to the present in a way words could not achieve. Charles understood that legacy is not passed through ceremony alone. Sometimes it is passed through something as small and delicate as a brooch. Catherine herself did not draw attention to the brooch. She did not adjust it or gesture toward it. She simply carried out the day's events as she always did. She spoke to those she met with kindness and interest. She listened more than she talked. She stayed fully present in each moment. The power of the brooch came from the fact that she did not try to control its meaning. She let the meaning form naturally in the minds and hearts of those who saw it. The public did not react with excitement or shock. The reaction was softer. It was a feeling of grounding, a sense that something important had been placed gently back where it belonged. The monarchy didn't need to explain itself in that moment. It simply needed to be seen as steady and thoughtful. The brooch did that. However, the appearance of the brooch was not the end of the story. The Queen Mother's personal jewels had been stored across several sealed boxes. These boxes were not part of the crown jewels or the official state collection. They were private belongings chosen for meaning. Each item carried a memory of a moment, a season, or a person. These boxes had not yet been opened. The brooch was only the first to re-enter public life. The appearance of the brooch suggested that more would eventually follow. Thank you for staying with us. Do you think Catherine deserved the Queen Mother's personal jewelry? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.